And good morning once again. Thank you for attending another Living Hope Today study. We're grateful that you're here. And today we move forward in Leviticus chapter 5. Now, before we get going too far into this, let's just recap a little bit about what's been going on here. Why do we need to have sacrifices? Well, you remember the theme of this book. How can unholy, sinful people be in the presence, be forgiven, be acceptable to an absolutely pure and holy God? How do those two things come together? Well, God has prescribed a sacrificial system that allows the sinner to be forgiven, allows the sinner to be in God's presence, allows the sinner to be atoned for. Okay, we saw the burnt offering. That's generally about forgiveness, just generally, I guess I should say. We saw peace offerings. These are blessings. These are ways to say thanks to God, to just commune with Him. We saw grain offerings. Again, thank you and communing in that relationship with Him. Sin offerings, excuse me, as we studied yesterday, is about particular sins. And today we get to guilt offerings, sinful attitudes, whether intentional or unintentional. Okay, well, let's just see what chapter 5 holds for us today. 5:1, if a person sins, now here's how you sin. This is what you call a sin of omission. He does not speak up when he hears a public charge to testify regarding something he has seen or learned about. He will be held responsible. Well, wait a minute, God, I didn't do anything. And God says, yeah, that's right. You didn't do anything. You knew that whatever testimony was being presented was false, or you had extra information that could have influenced whatever that transaction or trial was about, and you didn't say anything. Okay, God says you're going to be held responsible for that. All right. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? That's called a sin of omission. Or if a person touches anything ceremonially unclean. Okay, now we're getting to something. If the person comes in contact with something that is ceremonially, generally meaning temple related, tabernacle related in this case, touch that, a dead body or something that's forbidden, you'll be declared unclean. It doesn't mean you're condemned. There are ways to be made clean, but it does mean that your access, your relationship with God has been impacted by it. Okay, so whether it's the carcasses of unclean wild animals or of unclean livestock or of unclean creatures that move along the ground, even though he's unaware of it. You don't have to be up on the law to violate the law. You can still violate it even in ignorance. And if you do, he has become unclean, and that causes that breach of fellowship with God. Or if he touches human uncleanness. Okay, so we had ceremonial uncleanness. Now we have human uncleanness. This generally revolves around the idea of sanitation. Anything that would make him unclean, even though he's unaware of it. When he learns of it, okay, you don't have to know you did it. You don't have to know it was wrong to do it. But when you do it, God's standard still remains in place. He will be guilty. It's interesting, isn't it? So many times we think that we're going to plead to God about how we didn't understand the evil that we committed and that He should give us a break because we didn't know. Well, God says, look, I have a law, and the law is the law, and whether you know it or not, ignorance is no excuse for breaking the law. You need to know what I want. You need to study my commands. You need to look at what's right, what's wrong, where I draw the line, how I want, in this case, how I want society structured, how I want your life structured, and you need to do what I ask you to do. Otherwise, you fall into sin. Okay. Or if a person thoughtlessly takes an oath to do anything. Hey, I promise I'll mow your lawn tomorrow, but I never show up, whether it's a good thing or an evil thing. In any matter one might carelessly swear about, even though he's unaware of it. In any case, when he learns of it, he will be guilty. Take an oath. What does that mean? You promise to do something. How many times have you promised somebody to do something and you never did it? I mean, we're all guilty of that in some instances, or at least most of us are. In the end, God says, hey, let your yes be yes, let your no be no. If you say you're going to do something, the correct solution is go do it. If you say you're not going to do something, the correct solution is don't do it. But whatever you speak, if you make a vow or take an oath, if you swear you're going to do something, the next step is to follow through. If not, guilt comes upon you. And when anyone is guilty in any of these ways, he must confess. Okay, so there's one thing to do. God, I recognize that I've done something that you don't like, right? I violated your law. In what way he has sinned, all right? And as a penalty for the sin he has committed, he must bring to the Lord a female lamb or goat from the flock as a sin offering. So, the animal in question here is a female. It's a lamb or a goat. It comes from the flock. It's a sin offering. You say, wait a minute, Pastor, I thought we were talking about guilt offerings today. We are. Just wait a second. And the priest shall make atonement for him for his sin. Atonement. What's that? That's where God knows we're guilty, but the price for our sin has been paid so that God's punishment is alleviated. All right. That's the goal. Atonement. Okay. Verse 7. If you cannot afford a lamb, this is really amazing. What does God say? You know, it costs something to offer your female lamb or goat, as in the previous verse. What if you can't afford that? Well, God says, look, it's not that you get out of the sacrifice because you're poor. It's that we're going to offer something less expensive. That's how it works. He is to bring 2 doves or 2 young pigeons to the Lord as a penalty for his sin. One for a sin offering, the other for a burnt offering. So now 2 animals are sacrificed for the one that can't afford the lamb, one for sin and one for burnt offerings. All right, so you see how this expands a little bit. He is to bring them to the priest, who shall first offer the one for the sin offering. He's to wring its head from its neck, not severing it completely, and is to sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering against the side of the altar. The rest of the blood must be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. Okay, we looked at that yesterday. The priest shall then offer the other as a burnt offering in the prescribed way and make atonement for him for the sin he has committed, and what? He will be forgiven. You see that? So the burnt offering comes into play here. Atonement is again the goal of the offering, to be delivered from the guilt of sin and the penalty of sin. We are forgiven. All right, that's what God keeps pushing this whole sacrificial system to, that we are atoned for in our guilt. The guilt is laid in the Old Testament on the innocent animal who has no sin. Innocent blood is shed on behalf of the guilty, and forgiveness and atonement is the result. This is going to be played out ultimately in the cross of Jesus Christ, as he is the sacrifice and the priest who offers himself on behalf of sinful people. All right. Verse 11, if, however, he cannot afford 2 doves or 2 pigeons. Now we're talking, we really don't have anything, God. Well, he's to bring as an offering for his sin 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a sin offering. I just want you to get this. You have to bring something. I don't care how poor you are. You have to acknowledge your sin before me. You have to go through the sacrificial process of offering something to achieve atonement, to achieve forgiveness. right? Doesn't matter how poor you are. But God makes the concession here. Bring an offering for a sin, 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a sin offering. He must not put oil or incense on it, because it's a sin offering. He shall bring it to the priest, who shall take a handful of it as a memorial portion. Remember, we don't burn it all in a grain offering, and burn it on the altar on top of the offerings made to the Lord by fire. It's a sin offering. God says, I'm going to count that. In this way, the priest will make atonement for him, any of these sins he has committed, and he will be forgiven. That's the key. The rest of the offering will belong to the priest, as in the case of the grain offering. So in this situation, the sin offering is offered, but the priest ends up having some left over. Verse 14, the Lord said to Moses. Now, verse 14, just have this little phrase alert you to something. When you see that phrase, the Lord said to Moses, it generally means we're starting a new topic. The other thing it means, it's absolutely obvious, but we might not see it initially, is that this is a command from God. This isn't just Moses' opinion. This might be a nice thing to do. What about this? Let's think of this. Let's do some of this stuff. Maybe God will like us. No. God says, I have specific things that I'm going to tell you directly and in detail what I want. Do that. Okay? Verse 15, when a person commits a violation and sins, again, look at this, unintentionally, I didn't mean it, God, in regard to any of the Lord's holy things. Okay, what is this? Well, this might have to do with the whole sacrificial system and all the implements and all the things involved. He's to bring to the Lord as a penalty a ram from the flock, one without defect and of the proper value in silver. Oh, now we're talking about cash money. According to the sanctuary shekel, it is a guilt offering. So now we see the term guilt offering. And honestly, I'll tell you this, distinguishing between the differences between a sin offering and a guilt offering get a little bit confusing. As we move forward all the way through chapter 7, it'll clear up for us. But let's just see what it says today. Verse 16, he must make restitution, that's cash money, for what he has failed to do in regard to the holy things. Add 1/5 of the value to give it all to the priest, who will make atonement for him with the ram as a guilt offering, and he will be forgiven. So, okay, you've done something that has cost some loss to somebody. You make restitution to them, and then you add 1/5, 20%, all right, in currency, silver in this case. If a person sins and does what is forbidden in any of the Lord's commands, all right, you don't do what God says. Even though he doesn't know it, he's guilty and will be held responsible. Why do you think this gets repeated? Well, because most of us like that excuse. God, I didn't know. I didn't mean it. Well, God says it doesn't matter. Violation of the law is violation of the law, whether you knew it or not. I mean, it's the same in our court system. You might not ever have read that stealing is wrong. You didn't read the code. You don't know the law. But if you go steal something, aren't you going to be held accountable by the justice system? We hope so. That's what it's there for. God's system works the same way. Violate the law and throw yourself into guilt. You're responsible for the things you do. That's what God's telling us. He is to bring to the priest as a guilt offering a ram from the flock, one without defect and of proper value. In this way, the priest will make atonement for him for the wrong he has committed unintentionally, and he'll be forgiven. Again, God's not holding a grudge. God's not going to pour out his wrath as long as the sinner complies with what God wants. And at the end of the chapter, we get to this. It is a guilt offering. He has been guilty of wrongdoing against the Lord. So just before we go today, let's look at this. A guilt offering, What can we say about it? Well, it's going to run all the way into chapter 7. It tells us that you can sin against holy things, and that would put you in a position of needing to offer a guilt offering. You can sin involving the property of others. That again would put you in a position of needing to offer a guilt offering. It also involves restitution, 20%. So the sins, well, they're unintentional. Maybe it didn't seem like a big deal, but to God it is. You didn't bring an offering. You omitted to show up, or you ate the priest's portion, or you didn't pay a vow that you said you would pay, or I'm sure there's many other examples. But just understand, guilt is present even if sin is unintentional or done in ignorance. Okay, that's one of the points that keeps coming up. So the offering is what? Well, you return value if you've sinned against somebody's property, plus 20%, plus you offer a ram. These are the things about the guilt offering. So as we get through here to chapter 7, we'll see this come together a little bit to help us understand exactly the distinctions. But until then, I just pray church is serving well. God bless you.
Who is it who for sinners shed his blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood? It's Jesus. But do you know who he is? He's the invisible God, and he's the brightness of his glory, the first, the last, the future, the past,